Hello and welcome to Two Across, the podcast where two friends sitting on alternate sides of some body of water or some mountain range sit down and catch up over a crossword. I am Rob, sitting in Kathmandu, Nepal.
And I'm Theo, sitting in South London. Hello.
Hello, Theo. So we finally managed to catch up or make this record happen because I think I was driving back into Kathmandu and wrestling with traffic from the site that I was at, and you were in the throes of your interviewing work. So yeah, we
Yes, a slight delay due to work on both sides. And yeah, I was ensconced in a very interesting interview with an actor. It's a funny thing in interviewing actors, which I do a lot of. Sometimes they can be quite reserved and quite cagey and understandably don't want to reveal too much about them, their sort of personal life and things like that, which is fine, but presents a different kind of challenge as an interviewer. But sometimes, as was the case just now, they will be very, very open with you and talk in a very often quite personal and emotional way about their life and how that relates to their work. And it's really interesting. Yeah. And you're sort of torn on the one hand between getting really absorbed by the conversation and often, as was the case just now, quite moved by the conversation. But then on the other hand, there's this little voice going, okay, you have to edit all of this into a succinct Q&A format that is, not going to be too long or is going to sort of hit all the right kind of notes.
Sounds like podcasting, Theo.
Yeah, you always have that slight overarching narrator voice saying, okay, now you need to move on to the next subject, and you don't want to sort of interrupt the flow, but also there is a very strict word limit. So anyway, yes, all of which is to say, sorry, I was a few minutes late.
Yeah, well, I was expecting to be many minutes late because you never quite know when you get into Kathmandu what you're gonna, Kathmandu traffic is the ultimate box of chocolate, to quote Forrest Gump. You can literally be 2 hours depending if there's a protest or something, or you could be 45 minutes. And sometimes it's surprisingly smooth and sometimes it's brutally long and you're just sort of chugging along behind a diesel spewing Tata vehicle. It's not a lot of fun.
How was Holly colour throwing experience?
So I would like to say that something amazing happened, but it was a complete non-event because as we highlighted in the last episode, I'm in a labor camp, or was. So actually everyone kind of left. Like, it was basically a ghost town. One of the guys that I was working with showed up in the dining hall completely covered in red powder from head to toe, literally his hair, everything, and sort of smiling. So he said some people had color bombed him, but that was about all I saw. So non-event, unfortunately.
And you say labor camp, we should probably just clarify that's in no way a enforced labor camp.
It's not a gulag, no. I've been calling it this to my wife when we've been talking because I find it kind of amusing to say that I'm in a labor camp. But yeah, like a construction camp basically for this project.
You sent me some photos actually, and it did look sort of vaguely Stalinist, the sort of facility itself, but the scenery around it, absolutely stunning.
Yeah, it's really funny because it is a very kind of clinically cold concrete prefab sort of classic construction camp. I think I'm just trying to see how many C's I can string together. And you can see this exact camp anywhere in the world. I have been to places like this on several continents, I think, over the course of my work. And they all kind of feel the same. But then you look up in this one and you are literally surrounded by 500-meter high cliffs. It's basically in a very deep ravine where they are damming and then drawing power off of this fast-running river. But the ravine itself is just absolutely spectacular. And where they're going to have this sort of powerhouse and generate the power is at this confluence of two rivers, one being much more major than the other. But these huge mountains narrow just at that spot. And it's really spectacular. But you're kind of trapped because they don't always have the sort of most harmonious relations with the communities around. And the mot d'ordre, as they say in French, was that, thou shalt not leave the camp. And I'm sitting here sort of longingly looking at all trails and trying to find little walking trails around, thinking, if I could just get out and do a bit of... So there was a torturous aspect to it, I have to say. But I'm interested, Theo, in your talk about the interview format, because this is a reflection that I've been having. And I think I texted you this week about a podcast I've been listening to recently called Strangers on a Bench, which is really good. It's just a guy, I think he's in North London because he tends to wander. Hampstead Heath seems to be his stomping grounds, but he basically walks about and walks up to random people on benches and asks them if they'd be up for a 20-minute conversation, which he records. And then he takes highlights of that conversation or little quirky moments and turns them into songs, and then has the little song at the end that he's written, and they're quite well done. It's sort of been my guilty pleasure of late, and maybe not even guilty, but I think like everyone, and we've talked about it quite a bit on the show, I've been dipping too deep into news podcasts, and as you say, doom scrolling, but in my case, definitely doom casting, if that's a term.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
And I think it was going on this meditation retreat that made me realize that that was not only injurious to my mental health, which whatever, I mean, if it's important, you can accept the knock on your mental health, but then you wonder, like, is it important, or am I just sort of, is there a sort of masturbatory aspect to it? And sorry, I just added an E beside our show by saying that.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? You're constantly torn between the macro and the micro in terms of where your consciousness is at. And on the one hand, you're reading stories about the war in Ukraine, the madness in the White House, whatever political issue is the hot topic of the day. And then on the other hand, your focus is suddenly back on the immediacy of your own little world and whatever particular niche you seem to have fallen into. So a podcast like the one you're just describing, which by the way, I had when I used to talk about potentially doing a podcast, that was a sort of idea I had, not the making songs bit, but the talking to strangers bit, because I spend my life, as mentioned, interviewing quite well-known people.
Yeah.
And actually, I thought it'd be quite interesting just to put the spotlight on not so well-known people.
Yeah.
Because I think everybody has a story, don't they? And
well, that's what this podcast bears out, is that, and in London, I think it's as much a podcast about people and conversation as it is about London, because there's very few cities in the world that are like London in the sense of having such a panoply of humans from so many places. And people come to London, much for that matter as I and my family did, for a change, for something, for an adventure. And so you get people at an interesting phase in their life where they're open, where they're reflective. And I think that's really well captured in the discussion. But back to what you were saying about the micro, I think that's what makes it so interesting, is that it's just the everyday of people's lives and the decisions they're making and the things that they're maybe wrestling with, challenging. I mean, it's not heavy in any way, but it makes you realize how interesting everyday people that you might pass are. And that we get so focused on this, again, as you say, the macro and these big issues and this doom scrolling and also the star system that surrounds us, that many people thought the internet would reduce, but seems to have actually turbocharged. And we forget about just the everyday and the people around us. And that's where our lives are lived, right? I mean, very few of us are huge stars or doing magnificent, massive things. And actually, those people maybe aren't as interesting as our society pumps them up to be. But yeah.
Yeah. And also, in some ways, I've often, I've again interviewed quite a lot of quite high profile people, and I don't think fame is the panacea that a lot of people think it would be, especially in this day and age, when if you're a known figure, you in some ways become public property and you can't kind of escape yourself, whereas I enjoy that feeling of just not being known. You can walk through your local park and yes, people you know will strike up a conversation with you, but the idea of a total stranger coming over to you and saying, can I get a selfie or whatever, isn't going to be isn't something that I have to worry about. And I think there's a lot of richness to be found in the micro. That's one of the reasons I still love live theatre, because it puts you into an almost sort of meditative place where you're just engaging with a story on a stage, and that's where your focus is or should be for that point in time. And there's a lot to be said for that in this day and age. It's another thing children can do as well. They can remind you of the importance of very sort of immediate focus, I think,
because that's where they live their lives,
and that's where we should aim to live more of our lives,
yes.
I think. And there's joy to be found in that. I do have a football related
I was going to say, now we'll go back from the micro to the very macro.
Very macro. If you have any affiliation with Newcastle United, which I do, who on Sunday broke their 56-year trophy drought by winning I can't bring myself to call it the Carabao Cup because that's obviously a sponsor name. It's actually the League Cup because it involves every team in the 4, 5, whatever it is, divisions of English football. And we won it. We beat Liverpool,
Amazing.
who are currently top of the Premier League and a very good team. And our local boy hero, Dan Burn, who I think was the only local player on the pitch representing either team, scored the opening goal for Newcastle and put in a heroic performance throughout the match. And the whole thing gave one a very warm, fuzzy feeling that sport can occasionally do. And to see the sight of all of the Geordie fans just absolutely losing their minds was very gladdening.
Yes,
Rob.
I imagine.
Very gladdening.
Well, when you've suffered all your life following a team doggedly through the swamp of mediocrity, it is something when all of a sudden the way opens and you just get into this space. How do we get here? This rarefied air, and yet it just keeps going. It's this sort of weightless moment of sport fandom that hopefully everyone who suffered along with their home side gets to experience once in their life.
There's almost an anticlimax to it, and there's a very lovely interview with Dan Burn, the aforementioned local hero, where he's asked how he feels, and he says I feel kind of numb, you know, and then he says I don't want to go to sleep because I think I might be dreaming, and it's all sort of a bit otherworldly and clearly hadn't sunk in yet. I wonder if there's a small little part of it that is also just there's slight disappointment now. It's like that thing that I've strived my entire life to achieve has now happened, and somehow that changes everything.
What now?
So it's the thing about the sort of psychology of winning that I think is often not spoken about. That in one way it sort of satisfies something, and in another way it takes something away.
For sure. It's the psychology of achieving, I think, even more broadly, because we both harbor writing aspirations, and there is always that thing, you've got that thing in front of you that you're going to write your great thing, whatever it's going to be. And
absolutely, I
think a lot of people get to the other side of that. And I just finished a really interesting book called Bird by Bird. It's about writing. It's a female author. It's a sort of classic of the genre, very funny. She's very irreverent, but that's one thing she says, that she has this chapter on getting published, and she says, don't think that getting published is the be all and end all, because you may find on the other side of being published, if that you're lucky enough that happens, that actually it's the be all and end all was the doing and the relationships and all the things that you were engaged with while you were doing. But the actual moment is very anticlimactic.
Do you think one day when we get our first major corporate sponsor for this podcast,
Caravel, for instance,
when Carabao, the energy drink, decide that they're going to move their focus from football tournaments onto the world of whimsical podcasting, a part of us is going to die. Something of the sort of enjoyment of the journey will have dissipated.
But the money will sustain us, Theo.
The money will sustain us, Rob. That would be nice.
So speaking of achievements, Theo, of achieving the unachievable, and potentially getting to a point where we look back and say, well, what now? Maybe we need to go to a crossword and see if we can reach those rarefied heights that Newcastle United did this weekend.
We will channel the spirit of Dan Burn this week and see if we can knock it into the back of the net.
Let's go to the crossword, because crossing words is fun.
So I don't want to jinx us, but I do like doing this on the podcast. I've done a few of these in the last week or so, and I'm finding them markedly easier than they had been in the last month or so during our bleak streak. So I don't know if that's...
Maybe the setter was listening, maybe the setter's taken our feedback on board and has just slightly eased up on some of the more knotty clues, because we did go through a very, very rough patch, and I definitely found last week's among the easier that we've done.
It was.
And let's hope this week we can continue in that vein, because we need to get some scores on the doors, because we're now 13-8 behind.
We are.
But if we can get it to 13-9, I think we've got some hope.
Hope that was all but dashed 2 weeks ago. So let's see.
Just for listeners, we are this week on Guardian Quick Crossword number 17,117. And as ever, I will set a 30-minute timer. So without further ado, should we dive in, Rob?
Yes, sir. How about 4 down? Because I think I know this, which is nationality of Maria Montessori. I guess she of Montessori schools, 7 letters long.
I would hazard a guess at this. Is it Italian?
I believe she was Italian, yeah.
Okay.
So...
Yeah, Montessori, she's a very influential figure in the educative world.
Yes. Did you ever consider Montessori education for your children?
Well, we had the option of a Montessori nursery, and we, in the end, went for a different one, not on the basis of the fact we didn't want Montessori, but I didn't quite go far enough into the research to work out exactly what distinguishes Montessori education, but perhaps you know a bit more.
I think it's one of those sort of child-led more, that there's a bit more space to explore. That's my understanding, and I'm probably 100% wrong on that. Which in hindsight, sometimes anyway, there's a long conversation that we should not get into, but I do wonder whether I should have spent more time considering those options.
Maybe that can be a pin for us next time.
Maybe, yeah. Well, I do have a pin at the end of the pod, so don't let me forget that.
I will remind you.
9 across, ocean home of the Falklands. 8 letters long, starting in A from Italian. The first A.
Interesting, they've gone with the Falklands of all islands in this body of water, including mine, which is the Atlantic.
It is the Atlantic. For a second, I thought, is there some other sea or something that's specific to that area? And then I realized they said ocean, and then I realized, no, there isn't. So yes, Atlantic. It just seemed too easy. So now we have 5 down, which is director Christopher or singer Linda. 5 letters long with an L as the middle letter. Now, Theo, do we hold people in suspense, or you just want to give it to them?
Well, again, this is one that I'm sure all our listeners can easily get. So it's Nolan, Christopher Nolan, who is, I think, now currently making a 4-part film about the Beatles. From the point of view of each Beatle or something.
I honestly don't feel that the popular culture is saturated in enough Beatles.
I must be honest, I think 4 biopics of every individual Beatle is not necessarily what the world is crying out for, but
I agree.
Clearly Christopher Nolan feels that it is, so good luck to him with that.
Yeah. Probably Apple feels that there is, and they're willing to bankroll it to the tune of several $100 million or something like that. Anyway.
Without wishing to take up too much more time, because obviously we do need to press on with the crossword, I just wanted to get your views on something that I was considering this morning, which was whether to get tickets to see your countryman Neil Young in concert in Hyde Park this summer, which has become, like, Hyde Park's become a sort of, they attract very, very big names.
Yeah.
And they have all these, the whole thing is a bit gross because they have VIP areas, and if you just get the normal tickets, you've got to stand quite far back and whatever. Yeah. But it's still an opportunity to see Neil Young, and he's supported by Van Morrison and Yusuf Islam / Cat Stevens.
Whoa!
So it's a heck of a
pretty
nostalgia bill.
Yeah.
It's pretty heavy hitting bill. So I was like, oh, maybe this is one that I've just got to go to, because a chance to see 3 obviously pretty big names with impressive catalogues of music. The tickets, Rob, for just general admission, this is standing at the back, £125 each. And I'd want to go with somebody, ideally Kate, but if I do go with Kate, we obviously then have to get a babysitter as well, so the thing costs up. But you're looking at £250
it's a big
stand
ask
at the back. Do you think...
I'm a big Neil Young fan of the music, not necessarily the man, but I would pause. I think I would have your dilemma, and I would have to think long and hard, and probably by the time I'd had that think, all the tickets would be sold out. But yeah.
Well, this is the problem.
Yeah.
I did pause, and I haven't done it because it does feel very, very punchy. So we'll see. I'll report back on whether I decided to.
Perhaps in July from post-show.
Indeed.
So 7 down, not pro bono, 4 letters long, 3rd letter I, which is what you would have to do and what Neil Young will get after this concert.
Money?
Paid.
No. And it's going to be in Latin.
He's going to get paid.
Oh, right. I thought it would be a sort of Latin word for paid work, but no, you're right. It's just paid, isn't it?
Paid.
Simple.
This is good. 6 down, those seeking heads, witches, or fortunes. 7 letters long, third letter's an N.
Okay, those seeking... So a hunter. Hunters?
Yeah, witch hunt, fortune hunt.
Oh, headhunters.
And headhunt.
Yes.
Headhunters.
Of course. So headhunters. Nice. Well done.
Yeah. Well, no, I didn't do it. You did.
Well done, me. I just congratulated myself.
Go me.
So, are we any closer to getting one across, which goes right across the board?
So, Theo, I think I know what it is, but what I want to do instead is get all the ones that go down it. It's just like a cheeky little thing. We have
so one across, just to plant the seed in listeners' minds, is emotional connections, and it's 13 letters long.
Long one. Very interesting.
Okay.
To plant an emotional connection to this crossword in your mind, fair listeners.
Okay, well, the next down along is 3 down, which is a...
Excellent.
And it's scare.
Yes. And I believe I know what it is. And it is... Go ahead.
It's not just cares, is it? Because that would put the S on the end. No.
It is not, but that could be a good one. It is, I think, close to that. Just reverse the C and the A.
Acres.
Acres.
As in acres of space.
I think so.
Okay.
And here,
nice.
2 down, this would be the last one that would give us every letter possible that we could get in one across, which, to remind listeners, is emotional connections. Concerning business and trade, 8 letters long.
I think I've got emotional connections as well now as well.
Oh, so you know what the first letter of this is?
I do. Is it an E?
It is an E. You can have an E.
And could that one be enterprise?
I don't think so. I think enterprise is too long.
Fit. No. What is it then?
So this is what I studied in my undergrad, Theo. And what our incoming prime minister also studied at Harvard or somewhere. One of those. He was, while he was out there credential hunting, he studied this.
Credential hunting. I like it. Economic.
Correct. Economic. So now, emotional connections, friends. Space E, space A, space I, space N, space H, space P, space. Emotional connections. You could just say connections. I don't know why I need
connections.
Because you could have some of these that aren't emotional. But
vessels that sail on particularly stormy seas. It's relationships. Mm-hmm. And we also, from all of our downs, have all of the letters for 10 across, which is another...
My gosh, we are being spoiled today, Theo.
We really are. They're showering us with anagrams. The setter has definitely been listening to our podcast. There's no doubt about it. No. So this one is an anagram of scenic wants, and it's blank O, blank S, blank I, blank N, blank E.
And what's interesting, Theo, is of the 4 letters that we don't have, 3 of them are C's.
I've got it, Rob.
Lovely.
Finally. Only because this is about as easy as they come. Yeah. Because we have all the letters, but it's conscience.
Yes, or as I like to pronounce it, conscience. Yes.
Conscience. Yes. Like the science of cons.
Yes, exactly.
I like that. Should be maybe, if you study criminology, then that's a unit that you study.
You would study conscience in sort of second year, first semester.
Yeah, like the psychology of criminality or something.
Yeah.
So, all right, be mother, 8 across.
Yeah.
4 letters. I do know this one.
Do you?
It's blank O, blank R. Do you know what it means to be mother?
No, I really do not know what that is.
So if you're sitting around the Christmas dinner table and your uncle picks up the gravy jug and says, "Shall I be mother?" It means they're going to pour the gravy.
That is... So what be father is carve?
Presumably. Or go and sit in the study smoking a cigar. Yeah. But yeah, it's one of those... I have heard it said before, but it always sounds a bit weird.
It does sound weird.
I'll be mother. Please don't, Uncle Jeff.
Yeah.
Don't be mother.
I don't think that can be used anymore. I don't think I'm going to try that out.
So. I think that's well and truly cancelled. 12 across, and we have 20 minutes left exactly.
Okay.
And we're about a third of a way through, so this is working out nicely so far. We've got a something fancier or something toad.
Correct.
And toad is T-O-E-D.
Yep.
And that's 6 letters. Second letter I ends in N. So
So I was thinking the old camel toe, but it doesn't fit. So.
No, not camel toe.
No. But it is.
I'll be mother.
But
Oh God.
it is an animal.
It is an animal. It's pigeon.
It's pigeon.
Yeah.
What is a pigeon
Pigeon-toed.
fancier? We had this
Someone
before.
who looks after pigeons.
But why are they a fancier? Like, it sounds dirty.
It does sound dirty, but it doesn't mean you fancy pigeons.
Okay.
I think it is an old, a sort of, medievalish word that just means you are a handler of pigeons or a keeper of pigeons. But it's a good question. That's a pin, I would say.
Why wouldn't it be a pigeoner? Like, you have a falconer. You don't have a falcon fancier.
Yeah, it is. It does seem to be almost exclusively used in the world of pigeon racing. So I don't know
Pigeonry.
why. Pigeonry. Yeah. Is it On the Waterfront, that Marlon Brando film where he keeps pigeons? Possibly the only, or not the only, example of pigeon fancying in popular culture, but there probably haven't been that many. Anyway, moving swiftly on. 13 down. Something band beginning with E.
Yep.
7 letters.
Do we give it to the people?
Oh, yeah. Got it. I've got it. Took me a bit longer than you, but it's elastic. Yeah?
Yep.
Okay.
It is. Ooh, here we go. This is a good one. It's long, too. 15 across, starting with A, Theo.
Oh.
Final of the 5 stages. 10 letters long.
Okay.
So I first looked at this and I thought the Tour de France, but I think there's many more than 5 stages. I thought like Alsace or something.
Many more.
But
Yeah.
and then there's 12 stages in 12-step programs. But there's also the 5 stages.
Oh, of grieving. That's, yes, because it's something like denial and then...
Remember, Theo, denial's not just a river in Egypt.
Very nice.
It's a stage of
Anyway.
grieving.
The opposite of denial is acceptance.
Acceptance. Wow.
That's very... I like that. That's
I like the fact that
a
it gives
clue.
us a lot of letters and a lot of clues.
Yeah, it does. Well, absolutely. I mean, like on both counts. Okay, that gives us 16 down, yellowish, white, or elite. 5 letters beginning with C.
Yes. Which is very nice because when you click on a clue on this crossword, for those who have not yet played along, and you can by following the link in our show notes, everything that you're working on ends up highlighted yellow, whereas the other ones are white. So it's yellow
Yeah,
on
true.
white. And if you mix them together, you would have a color that resembles the thing that is skimmed off the top of fresh milk from a cow.
Oh, what? Cream? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, like cream of the crop?
Yeah.
An elite?
Yeah.
Okay, nice.
Cream of the crop, they rise to the top. You never eat a pig because a pig is a cop. I was not going to do that in character because I cannot do the Boston Irish accent, but, you know.
Very nice.
House of Pain needed to make an appearance there on our podcast.
House of Pain, of course.
Yeah.
Jump around?
Jump around.
Yeah. What a song.
Yeah.
That's one of those. That is one of those songs that if that comes on at a wedding or somewhere, I'm onto that dance floor so fast that it's embarrassing, frankly, and I just can't help myself.
Yeah.
It's just, and it's such an easy one because you just jump
That's
around.
it. That's it.
It's not complicated.
Very easy.
You know.
I think they call that pogoing.
Yeah, pogoing, exactly. A lot of these TikTok dances now, it's like they're really quite complicated, and something comes on at a wedding and people are like doing all these moves, and there's something that you haven't seen that's gone viral that is, but it's all ultimately quite complicated. Whereas something like Jump Around, come on, that is just easy.
See, this is where you have like the small age gap that exists between us makes it that I never find myself in that situation. Because I'm just like that little bit higher up that there's no chance of me ever going to a place where anyone is consuming and then reenacting anything viral.
Yeah, I say that. You see, having said that, Rob, I don't think I have either. I think I'm just imagining that I would go to a party where people were all dancing a TikTok dance together, but actually I haven't.
So you're still in situ, waiting for House of Pain to come on, sitting on a chair at the edge of the dance floor, arms crossed, while people are doing some modern Macarena that you're completely out of touch with.
In my day, it was Saturday Night by Wigfield. That had a very, very specific dance
Did
routine,
it?
and everybody seemed to know it apart from me. So maybe I'm still scarred by that formative experience. Anyway, Rob, we need to get back to this because we are pissing our time away once again.
Good song by Chumbawamba there that you're referencing in the lyrics, yes?
Oh gosh, yes, another 90s reference. Well done.
Let's see how many more we can cram into the 10
How
minutes
many
that
more we
remain
can
us.
cram in?
All right.
That was a weird lyric. Anyway, so 19 across is senior lawyers or spouses, and there's fourth letter T and sixth letter E. It's 8 letters in total. I'm just going to say it because we haven't got time. It's partners.
Mm-hmm.
So let's move on to... Do you know this one? Sedimentary accumulation, 14 down. 7 letters.
I've been looking at it all week as I stare at the eroded riverbank by the labor camp, but I have not immediately.
No.
It'll come.
Not maybe if we get 14 across, that'll help us.
Could be good, yeah.
DJ's appointments, 6 letters, third letter S.
Oh. Well, DJs play at parties, weddings, raves.
Yeah, that's tricky.
Yeah.
Not seeing it.
No. Oh, dear.
Oh, okay. We can get 11 down, though, which will give us another letter there.
Okay.
The clue is actual, sand, gravel, and cement. 8 letters, fourth letter C. That's presumably concrete.
Oh, very nice. I feel like all of a sudden the accumulated tiredness of this week has just caught up with me. The first part was going well, and now I'm feeling like a deer in headlights as I stare at these clues. So, Theo, lead us through.
I'll try, Rob, but I'm also not feeling like I'm particularly firing on all cylinders. 14 across now, so DJ's appointments now has third letter S and fifth letter O. Go on.
Oh, no, shoot. I thought it was going to be session, but we need 2 S's for that.
We really need that first letter from sedimentary accumulation.
Okay, well, look, we'll get it. I think what we got to do is go down and then come back up. So I think... Go ahead.
21 across, which goes right across the board, is... I mean, they're just giving this away for free.
Yes.
The clue is under no blank, 13 letters. Fourth letter C, sixth letter M, and the penultimate letter is E. But surely, I mean, that's too easy.
But I think it is circumstances, my friend.
It is indeed.
And sorry to bring this one up, Theo, but 18 down is a very long cloth, elaborately swathed, 4 letters long, space A, space I, if circumstances is correct.
A very long cloth, elaborately.
So now you got to rewind the tape and hear the little joke I made at the beginning.
Oh, what was that joke, Rob?
Well, I mean,
maybe
literally,
I blanked it from my memory.
30 seconds ago when I introduced the clue. It's a sorry. Sorry, Theo.
I didn't spot
Terrible.
it, Rob. I didn't spot it. I think, to be fair, it's your accent.
Yeah.
Sorry and sorry do sound quite similar.
Sorry and sorry would be
Whereas in my accent, that is a very clear...
Sorry
very
and
clear
sorry.
14 across.
Yes.
14 across. DJ's appointments.
Yep.
So, no, we still don't have any more letters for that. But we do have more letters for our sedimentary accumulation, which is blank blank P, blank S, blank T.
Which is a sedimentary deposit.
Oh, yes.
Yep.
Well done.
So 14 across now is D space S space O space. DJ's appointments.
And those are all the letters we're going to get.
Yeah, and these are places where DJs played, perhaps in the 70s.
It's discos.
Yeah.
The word disco is very joyous and takes me right back to the days of school disco.
It is absolutely joyous. I mean, I think disco was just the era of utter hubris, and it was literally an expression of total drug-fueled hubris. Like this style, the way they danced, the music, it's painfully and shamelessly gleeful.
Oh yeah, it's totally gleeful, totally camp, a little bit trippy, as you alluded to.
Yeah.
But ultimately just good harmless fun.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And we need more of that in our lives.
So we have an excellent record in our collection, which one of the great stars of the Montreal Canadiens of the 70s, arguably the second most prolific scorer that Montreal ever had, is a fellow named Guy Lafleur. Quebecer as well. So he was much loved. And he was called the blonde demon, le démon blond, because he had these flowing blonde locks. And so he was quite the player. Nice. And in the mid-70s, Guy Lafleur put out a disco record where he narrated on top of heavy disco beats advice to children on how to play hockey. It was so awesome. It's like he's like rapping on top about like how to work on your slap shot and like what he does to like wind up and like find a good passing lane and stuff. It's
so that would be like Wayne Rooney putting out a rap record about how to play better football.
Yeah,
I mean that
like a UK drill record where he kind of just goes about how to play football. That would be basically.
Well, maybe we can put a link to that in our notes this week.
Yeah, I'm sure we can find that somewhere.
That needs to be heard.
It is gorgeous.
Meanwhile, we have 2 clues left and the luxury of 7.5 minutes.
7.5 minutes.
Do we dare say these are getting too easy, Rob?
I don't know. I think listeners are going to accuse us of having downcycled to an easier crossword.
Yeah, you're right. I promise that we haven't done anything. Not guilty.
Maybe it's the same setter, but they're literally like sort of bipolar, and so they.
Well, look, let's not get smug here, Rob, because we haven't got these yet, and I am not seeing them straight away. You may have already got them.
Well, Fort 17 down is the Pan Friars protection, starting in A and ending in N. And if you ever thought about maybe if you ever cooked bacon naked, I don't know if you ever had that experience or without a shirt on, you would.
I can imagine that is an activity not very wise to do naked. Frying bacon.
You would want one of these to cover your torso and.
And maybe you could wear one of these that had an image of a naked body on it.
Yes.
You know, like the Michelangelo David apron, which is... Apron, I've just said it. But yes, the answer is apron.
Apron.
I've always wanted one of those, actually, and I've never managed to get one.
Next time I'm in Florence, Theo, I will get you the Michelangelo's David apron. I will also get you the sexy priest calendar that seems to be everywhere you go in an Italian city, particularly Rome.
Yes, I do remember seeing those.
These sort of like priest next door photos in black and white. It's like the equivalent of the fireman calendar for sort of old Italian women. And the funny thing,
brilliant.
If you look at it, because I've been to Italy a few times over the years, it doesn't change. Like the guy on the front, he's probably from the 60s. We call him Father Romano in our family, and we laugh about it because it's like always the same guy on the sexy priest calendar. Anyway.
And presumably fully robed. I mean, he's not going to be...
cassocked, and he's got the everything. Yeah.
Wearing a mankini or something.
No mankini. No.
That would be a calendar to make headlines.
Yeah.
So the Pope is very ill, by the way.
I know.
I think we could be in for a real-life conclave.
Which is crazy, because that movie is so timely. And I did watch it on the plane, Theo, at your advising, and it is absolutely it's just great. I would never have imagined that a papal drama could have been so very interesting, but there it was.
It's always the way I'm a sucker for films like that, which are very sort of close character studies.
Yeah.
And it always makes me want to live that life, you know? Yeah. I come away thinking, I should have been a Catholic priest or, a cardinal and got to go to conclaves.
I could have been having that dilemma. Why not?
I could have been putting my little vote in a brass
brazier, I believe they would call it.
A brazier. Anyway, it is very good. It is very good and has a wonderful cast. 20 across, ridge of rock, coral or sand. And this is our final clue of the day. It is R blank E blank.
Yeah, and you might be wearing, as you are standing on one of these, a coat that was referenced in our last... Or was it the last? No, the one before that we did with Martin that we didn't get.
The reefer coat.
The reefer coat, my friend.
So you would be standing on a reef. I
thought you were drawing that out for fun.
It's taken me so long.
I was like, wow, Theo's really moosing the drama today.
I'm not. Oh, my brain doesn't quite work quickly enough to enable me to do things like that. That's okay. Excellent. Well, look, moving swiftly on, we have completed this week's crossword. And I believe it's your crossword of record because you did the intro.
Right.
So are there any spellings that you're not sure about? or are we happy to?
Well, we're taking the British spelling of acres, but that's obvious because of the way pour
Yes.
intersects the word. I think the spelling of the Atlantic Ocean hasn't changed since we were schoolboys, so I'm confident in that. I think conscience is all right. I accept acceptance for what it is.
Yeah.
No, I really don't see anything that could be
No.
a slip up for us. A banana skin,
Wow.
as you like to say on your side of the pond.
Indeed. Well,
No banana skins.
which is a myth, isn't it, really? Because I've stepped on many a banana skin in my time, hoping to immediately pratfall. And actually, if anything, they make the ground even more...
Yeah.
They increase the purchase of your shoe on
Right.
the ground.
Right, there's like a grippiness
So-
inherent to the sort of
Yeah.
potassium in the peel or something.
Yeah, unless you've got a really rotten one.
Yeah.
In which case, maybe,
Well, maybe back in the day in the UK, you never got fresh bananas because they were coming by slow boat, and so they had
There you go.
they had less rigid and more kind of mushy peel.
maybe. Maybe so.
But you know what's going to happen, Theo? For your hubris, you are going to slip on a banana peel today.
Do you know what? I would genuinely love that if...
Especially if I gave myself a concussion, that would be just
Oh, what a full circle moment that would be.
yeah.
Right, should we check all
Yeah.
and just get
I will
this done?
reveal all. Oh, no, check all. Ready?
Check all. I think check all then shows you if you've got any letters wrong.
Yeah.
So I normally do check all, and it has revealed we are right.
All good. All right.
So we did channel the spirit of Dan Burn and Newcastle United.
We did.
And we ended our... Well, we didn't quite end our drought because we also won last week.
No.
But we continued the damp period. What's the opposite of a drought? A monsoon?
Yeah. Well, April showers are coming, Theo. Not quite a monsoon yet. Maybe a Scotch mist.
Apparently we're going to get a heat wave this week in the UK. And
you
we're going to
really?
get up to 19 degrees
Holy smokes.
in London, which is just mad.
Montreal was teens yesterday, 15 or 16, which in
Whoa.
March is crazy. Isabel sent me a photo of the back deck, which I can show you a picture after this pod, had, and I'm not joking, sort of 3 feet of snow and ice on it, and it's almost gone. Disappeared in the space of a week. That's crazy.
Gosh.
And that's what happens in the spring. The heat comes and then everything just disappears,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden it's
So lots
summer.
of dog shit revealing itself.
That's right. Everywhere.
As we speak.
Wear rubber boots, not because of the water.
Crosswords done, that was fun. Now let's have a chat.
All that to look forward to on your return, which is, speaking of which, is that quite soon?
Yeah.
Tomorrow
yeah.
or the day after?
It's in 3 days. So I've got 2 more days dealing with stuff here in country. I gotta go and render an account of myself to the management of this business and convince them that certain things need doing and certain things should stop being done. So I've got to align my thinking on that and then go in and make my big presentation and then jump on a plane and fly through the Emirates, which is the first time in my life I've ever flown through the Middle East. I've never set foot on the Middle East. That's one area of the world that is blank to me. That and Antarctica. That and Russia. Never been to Russia. Yeah.
Are you going to stop off at all, or are you just
not
changing?
Not enough
flights?
time, really. I mean, I could almost sort of get in, but to be honest, it doesn't really interest me. Like I flew through Dubai, and as I was landing, I took a video because my eldest son he's quite interested in geography, and he's interested in Dubai, and he's bugging me because I have this project in Saudi Arabia. He said, if ever you go, you have to bring me along. So I took a video as we were landing of this Dubai skyline, because there's the Burj Khalifa, which actually I couldn't get in the video. But anyway, I landed and I sent in the video, and he wrote back, he said, looks kind of crappy. And it kind of does. Like, it's very underwhelming. You land in Dubai, it's like,
No, fair. Yeah.
there's that like weird leafy thing. Like they love in the Gulf states, they just love marinas. They love luxury and just, I think they like using a lot of fuel to move a lot of earth. That's something they just are really into.
Well, it's like when you fly over any part of Western America and you see, these sort of desert landscapes, and then there's just this very lush green development
Yes.
that often features a golf course and
Perverse.
some kind of entertainment complex. And you sort of think, ugh.
Yeah.
There's something a bit vomit-inducing about the whole idea that it's the sort of emblem of humanity's preponderance to mess with the natural world.
So this is, I think, if there was one thing that was going to situate on one side or the other of the political divide, certainly in the United States, it would be whether you see one of those places as awesome and a destination, or whether you see that as completely grotesque.
Yeah,
I think
completely.
your answer to that question would be very highly correlated with your voting intentions.
Yeah, absolutely true. You just fly them over to Dubai and just say, give me an immediate reaction to what you've just...
Excited, can't wait to get your clubs out and get down there, or keep going?
I've realised my use of the word preponderance there was completely the wrong word. I think what I was trying to say was predilection, possibly, or, something of that nature, but not preponderance.
Predilection is very onomatopoeic, because it kind of has like delicious in it, you know?
Yes, I love the word predilection, actually.
Yeah.
And it does have two pronunciations. Some people will say a predilection.
Really?
Possibly, yeah. I think maybe that's more of a North American pronunciation, but I would certainly say
Yes,
rather
I
than
would say.
pre.
I would say predilection.
I have a predilection, but anyway, you had a pin, Rob, which you asked me to remind you. So
I have a pin, and it relates to travel, and it relates to something that we spoke about last week, where you asked why there is this bizarre 45-minute extra sort of thing in Nepal time, or minus 15 minutes. So for listeners, Nepal time is 5 hours and 45 minutes ahead of Universal Time, UTC, which is kind of odd. There aren't many places. In fact, this is the only place in the world I can name. There are some places that have half an hour. Newfoundland in Canada, for instance. When I grew up watching shows, they'd say, oh, this show's at 5 o'clock in Montreal, 6:30 in Newfoundland. And we always thought that was very strange, that Newfoundland was very odd. But Nepal went them one better and added this sort of 15-minute buffer. So I had said that it was probably a middle finger to India, just saying, ha, 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 we're going to be different. We're not going to accept your time. Well, I was partly right. So Nepal adopted that 5:45 ahead of Universal Time in 1986. It was largely because they centered their time zone on Kathmandu, and they basically just did a calculation of, based on the longitudinal line and the number of degrees you are from Universal Time, what would that correspond to in time zones? And it corresponds to pretty much 5 hours and 45 minutes, maybe like 5:47 or something like that. So they decided to be very specific in doing so. However, Nepal also wanted to maintain independence from India in various aspects, including timekeeping. So I wasn't entirely wrong.
yeah.
So there was an aspect of independence, and there was an aspect, I suppose, of precision, which is a good nod to the Nepali people and their search for accuracy in their time zone,
Absolutely.
as opposed to just slavishly following some convention because of who's south or north of them. Now, that got me into the rabbit hole of time zones, and it reminded me of the last time I was in this area after this recent foray of visits to Nepal, and that was in 2002, where I traveled from Nepal into Tibet. And when you cross the border by vehicle, which is very difficult to do now apparently, but at the time you could, all of a sudden your time leaps forward by, I think, something like 3 hours. It literally just you cross the border and your time leaps forward. And the reason for that is that China, all of their time zones, and I think China spans something like 5 time zones. Yes, 5 time zones. They only have actually 1 time zone in China. But unlike India, who cover 2 time zones and have centered their time largely on the middle of India, because they also only have 1 time zone, China centered their time on Beijing time, which is at the easternmost extremity of the country. And so it's completely insane, because when I was in Lhasa in Tibet, the sun can rise as late as 10 a.m. and it sets super late. So it's very bizarre.
People living in the north of the UK think that the UK is too London-centric. Can you imagine the scenes if... I mean, in some ways, our time is geared around London.
Actually, world time is geared around London time.
World time, the entire world time. But obviously, the country's not big enough to span any time zones,
No.
so or more than 1 time zone. So that is outrageous.
It's
If
crazy.
you live on the far west of China and you're having just to gear your daily life around this time zone that is so far off what it naturally should be.
Yeah.
I mean, it's in some ways it's a very Chinese thing to do, I
Yeah.
suppose, isn't it? Because
Centrally planned and governed from Beijing. Therefore, they
Yeah,
should.
absolutely.
They should. And it was after the communist revolution, I think it was in 1949 or something like that, that this was officially decreed. I may be wrong on the date, but it was somewhere around there.
That's really interesting, Rob.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's something I should have known, but I certainly didn't know.
I just don't think it's broadcast, but it's just one of those weird things. And because I entered the country, most people would enter China in the east. So you wouldn't really think about it. You'd go to Shanghai or Beijing or something like that. But because I literally entered China in its westernmost extremity, it was very sudden and quite jarring that all of a sudden,
Be a good little sort of trick pub question, you know. How many time zones does China have?
Yeah.
People would be like, 3, 4, maybe even 5.
Yeah.
No, it's 1.
It's 1.
That's, very, very interesting. Cool. So obviously you're traveling back to, you're remaining in Nepal for another few days and then traveling back. Do you have anything else on your radar this week?
No, I'm getting home. I'll be completely exhausted, and I arrive into a house in which one of the floors is not serviceable for the foreseeable future because we're completely redoing our floors on the 3rd floor. And they started the work earlier than expected, so my poor suffering wife has been managing this all on her own. So well done, honey. But I'm going to go in and take my bite of the shit sandwich. As of Friday, she's heading off to Europe to do some hiking with a friend. And I am digging into said sandwich with my 3 children as we live together in the basement and try to survive. So that's what I got going on.
I can't wait for next week's episode.
I don't know where I'm going to be recording that. There's probably going to be the sound of aggressive hammering in the background. So it's going to be an interesting,
That won't be anything to do with the renovation project. That will simply just be children taking out anger.
Their aggression.
Or possibly you taking out your pent-up furies. But either way, I wish you well with all of that.
And you?
I don't have much going on, to be quite honest, over the next couple of weeks. The most exciting thing I have on the immediate horizon is an appointment at the hygienist tomorrow. Nice. So that will be lots of fun. That's the dental hygienist, I should hasten to add.
Not to teach you about hand washing or something.
Not to teach me about hand washing. Although it does always feel a little bit sort of patronizing because they'll often just talk me through the basics of toothbrushing. like I'm hearing it for the very first time. But God bless that hygienist. You know, every 6 months or so, she just gets me back to default, and then I spend the next 6 months screwing it all up.
Gets your tartar off.
Indeed. Chisels away at it for a good half hour.
Nothing like that. It's like a massage for your face.
Nothing quite like it. It is a bit. It is weirdly sort of therapeutic and occasionally painful. So that's exciting.
Nice.
And
well, enjoy.
I really have nothing else interesting on. So that's me.
Well, you're basking in the glow, Theo, of the victory. I mean, you got at least a week of pure basking ahead of you.
Do you know, I have been feeling quite buoyant today, and I think it is a lot to do with that. I'm mainly just so pleased for all of the Newcastle fans who've suffered through so many years of disappointment and dreadful owners and managers, and just feeling like they're this sort of giant team that have never quite lived up to their potential. Billing. And even this cup, nobody's going to pretend that this trophy we've just won is the Premier League or the Champions League, but it's still a proper trophy. Oh, yeah. You know, and they will. Someone managed to get, or maybe a team of people managed to get a Newcastle shirt onto the Angel of the North statue.
Wow.
Which I don't know if you've ever seen.
Yes, I have, with its giant airplane wings.
Yes, it's an Anthony Gormley statue, and it's absolutely vast.
It is huge.
Yeah, exactly that. You've just described it. It's basically like an upturned jumbo jet with these massive great wings, and someone managed to drape a Newcastle shirt over it, which made me very, very happy to see. Or maybe it was Dan Burns. I mean, Dan Burns is so big, you know. Maybe his shirt was big enough for the Angel of the North, and he just sort of dropped it on there on the way back from Wembley. But either way, congratulations to them. And on that happy note, let's send our listeners off to their hopefully more interesting weeks than mine. I'll let you sign off.
Well, listeners, enjoy that interesting week, and we will be back to ennoble your next week at our normal crosswording time. You have been listening to Two Across. If you would like to get in touch with us, we have one way of doing that accessible to all, and that is to write us at twoacrosspod@gmail.com. If you like the show and you want to share it with someone, like or subscribe. We always appreciate that. And if you don't, well, then just keep on listening, and we'll see you next week.